we are not going in the right ways. We are still thinking each nation is right. We want to defend our rightness.
Erich von Däniken has finally spoken out, revealing something that's left both fans and experts stunned. Join us as we uncover his new discovery, one that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient mysteries and our connection to the stars. The revelation that's shaking everything. Just when it seemed like his voice had already stirred the waters, Erich von Däniken dropped a revelation that made even his most devoted listeners sit up straight. After years of proposing that visitors from the stars once walked the earth, he claimed to have uncovered fresh clues, hidden manuscripts, underground chambers, and symbols he said could not be explained away by traditional history. He suggested that everything we've been taught about our past might be missing a massive piece of the puzzle. Some of the new material he points to include a mysterious library of gold panels buried deep beneath Ecuador, writings that link forgotten stories across continents, and ancient sites whose design and alignment hint at something more than what archaeologists have accepted. He argued that these clues show a pattern across time and space where human civilizations seem to pause, look up, and build monuments, not just for gods they imagined, but for guests they believed had come from beyond. According to him, these visitors left behind echoes. In the straight desert lines of Peru, in the tombs of Egypt, in objects that appear far more advanced than their creators should have been able to craft. This new phase of his work feels different. It's not just what if, but what if we're already sitting on the evidence? It's as if he's saying, the question isn't just whether we were visited, but whether those visits shaped our history, technology, and stories in ways we've never acknowledged. The excitement among his followers is electric. The skepticism among traditional scholars is sharper than ever. He invites the audience, young and old, to imagine walking into a secret vault below the earth, sliding aside a metal panel, and discovering carvings that mirror the same mythic symbols found on the other side of the planet. He asks, what if the legends of gods descending from the sky were actually memories of something real, something beyond Earth? For many viewers, this feels like a door opening in a house they thought they already knew. Of course, these claims still carry a heavy weight of debate. Scientists say that extraordinary assertions require extraordinary proof. And up to now, many feel the proof hasn't reached that level. But Erich seems to relish the tension. He waves the torch and says, "Come look at the shadows with me." Whether you believe him or not, you can't help but feel the jolt of possibility. The power of this revelation lies in how it reframes the conversation. It's no longer only about ancient carvings or unexplained stones. It's about humanity's place in the universe. If even one of the links he points to turns out to hold up under scrutiny, it would ripple through history, culture, and even religion. It would mean rethinking the story of where we came from and perhaps where we're going. So as we move from the spark of his idea through his rise to global fame, we now brace for the shock. So who exactly is Erich? The mind behind the mystery. Erich von Däniken's story began in a quiet Swiss town called Zofingen, where he was born in April 1935. From a young age, he was the kind of child who asked too many questions, the kind that grown-ups found hard to answer. While other kids played outside, Erich could often be found lost in thought, staring at pictures of pyramids, temples, and carvings that seemed far too advanced for their time. There was something about the mysteries of the past that captured him completely. He was raised in a Catholic family and attended a Jesuit boarding school called Collège Saint-Michel in Fribourg. There, surrounded by priests and old texts, he learned to read Latin and ancient history. But instead of strengthening his faith in traditional stories, those lessons opened a new curiosity. As he read about gods descending from the heavens, fiery chariots in the sky, and men who spoke to beings from above, he couldn't help but wonder if those tales were more than myths. Maybe he thought ancient people were describing something real, something they didn't fully understand. After finishing school, Erich didn't follow the path of a scholar. He stepped into the hospitality world, working in hotels and even on cruise ships. Yet even as he served guests from around the globe, his mind stayed busy with thoughts about lost civilizations, star maps, and unexplained relics. Every spare moment he had was spent reading about archaeology, astronomy, and ancient cultures. Slowly, an idea began to form in his mind, one that would later change his life completely. By the time he reached his early 30s, Erich had gathered years of notes and theories. In 1968, he released a book that would shock both academics and the public. The book suggested that many ancient monuments and myths might not have been inspired by gods, but by visitors from other worlds. He believed that long ago, advanced beings had come to Earth, helped shape our civilizations, and left behind traces of their presence in carvings, temples, and mysterious symbols found across different continents. The idea was bold, and for many, unbelievable, but to others, it was thrilling. Suddenly, Erich von Däniken's name was everywhere. People were captivated by his imagination and courage to ask questions others were too afraid to explore. His book became an international bestseller and was translated into many languages. It inspired TV programs, interviews, and a movement of people who began looking at ancient history in a completely new way. Still, Erich wasn't after fame. He continued traveling to faraway places like Peru, Egypt, and South America, visiting strange sites and comparing stories from different cultures. He looked at the Nazca lines, the Egyptian pyramids, and ancient temples carved into solid rock, always searching for connections that could prove his theory true. He wasn't claiming to know all the answers, he simply wanted the world to look deeper, to see that maybe our ancestors were not alone when they built their wonders. Many experts dismissed his ideas and argued that they were only fantasy. But whether people agreed or not, Erich's voice could not be ignored. He opened the door for a new kind of conversation about the past, one that mixed science, faith, and imagination. And through it all, he kept his calm curiosity, the same spark that had driven him since childhood. Even now, living quietly in Switzerland, Erich continues to write, speak, and share his theories. He remains one of the most recognizable names in the world of unexplained mysteries, a man whose questions changed how millions view human history. And just as his ideas began to spread, the world's reaction took on a life of its own. Some called him a genius. Others said he had gone too far, but what happened next would lift him from being a curious thinker to a global phenomenon that nobody saw coming. From controversy to global fame. The moment when the world really sat up and paid attention to Erich von Däniken came after he published his first big book in 1968. He wasn't a scientist in a lab or a historian in a university. Instead, he was a hotel manager turned storyteller with a question that made folks gasp. What if our ancient past wasn't just built by humans, but inspired by beings from the stars? His book, Chariots of the Gods, introduced this idea in a way that felt thrilling and bold. Suddenly, Erich became a name people heard when they watched documentaries or flipped through magazine articles about mysterious ancient places. His voice sounded different, part curious explorer, part rebel challenging the usual story. He pointed to the towering pyramids in Egypt, the long straight lines on the Peruvian desert, strange carvings on old stones, and asked why these marvels seemed out of place for their time. Could they be leftovers, not just of human ambition, but of something else entirely? As his ideas spread, his influence grew. The book traveled across languages and countries. What began as one unusual theory became a conversation that reached living rooms, late-night cafes, and classrooms around the world. Some people were fascinated, others were skeptical. But whatever they felt, they were listening. On one side, fans embraced Erich's vision as a breath of fresh air. They loved the possibility that maybe our ancestors looked up at the sky and weren't just dreaming, they were remembering. They liked how his ideas invited wonder, not just explanations. On the other side, scholars and scientists raised red flags. Many said the evidence was thin, the leaps too wide, the logic too playful for serious study. They worried that the adventure of the idea overshadowed the rigor of proof. Yet the debate itself became part of the legend. Erich's book didn't just challenge history, it became history. It spurred TV shows, documentaries, and a whole wave of what-if thinking. He had transformed from a curious kid staring at old stones to a global figure stirring up how we think about our human journey. The idea that alien visitors might have visited Earth long ago influenced our stories, technology, and architecture, became a cultural spark. What made this moment so powerful wasn't just what he claimed, but how he claimed it. He spoke with wonder and invited the audience to imagine. He asked us to ask new questions. What if the builders of ancient temples were looking to the sky? What if the legends of gods coming down weren't just myths? In doing so, he brought ancient mysteries into the present moment, made them alive and compelling again. And as his ideas wove into popular culture, they also sparked personal journeys. For many, seeing history through Erich's lens was like finding a hidden door in a familiar house. It didn't mean all the old doors were wrong, but maybe there were secret passageways waiting to be explored. The world didn't always agree with him, but the world couldn't ignore him. Now the stage was set, with his name echoing in conversations about human origins, archaeology, and the cosmos. The next chapter would take him beyond a daring idea into the spotlight of global fame. It would be a ride full of both acclaim and controversy, and it would change how millions looked at our past and the cosmos. Erich isn't simply adding another chapter to the mystery he's claiming. The chapter never ended. And that raises the big question. Are we ready to turn the page? Now, with his ideas circulating far beyond dusty bookshelves, the world around Erich von Däniken began to react, and the reactions were as vivid as his revelations. On one hand, fans gathered in droves. At events and festivals, thousands came just to hear him speak, to see his slides of mysterious stones and strange alignments, and to feel the wonder that he still carries after decades. He had become more than a writer. He was a storyteller who invited everyone to look up at the stars, imagine, question, and dream. At the same time, though, the critics were just as loud. Scholars and mainstream scientists often shook their heads at his claims. Many said what he described was beautiful to imagine, but lacked the kind of strong, verifiable proof needed in serious science. They pointed out that asking, "What if?" can be fun, but building a foundation of accepted knowledge requires more than questions. It needs facts that hold up under scrutiny. Despite the polarized views, one thing was clear. Von Däniken had changed the conversation. Words like ancient astronaut and extraterrestrial visitor were no longer only in sci-fi novels. They were part of public debates, documentaries, even school discussions. His work had disrupted the usual story of human history as purely earthbound and self-made. The idea that we might have been influenced by something greater, something cosmic, was now part of the collective imagination. But beyond fame and controversy, there was another layer, his personal path. Even as he talked about aliens and ancient mysteries, he still held on to his own faith, his own spiritual sense of wonder and humility. People saw him not just as a provocateur, but as someone who asked big questions, who lived in that space between curiosity and uncertainty. That mixture made his story even more compelling. A man rooted on earth, yet always looking upward. As time went on, health and age began to shape his presence. Reaching his 9th decade, von Däniken found himself stepping back from some of the limelight, scaling down his tours and public appearances. Yet even in that transition, his legacy remained active. The ideas he championed kept expanding, adapted by new voices, new formats, and fresh generations. His story was no longer just his, it had become a movement. So in this chapter of reactions of fans cheering, scholars critiquing, a writer aging yet persistent, we see the ripple effects of his claim. The notion that ancient mysteries might hint at cosmic visitors was no longer niche. It had gone mainstream. And now all of this sets the stage for something even more dramatic. What happens when the evidence seems to align, when the whispers of history grow louder, and when the spotlight turns from questions to potential breakthroughs? Reaction from experts and believers. Now things begin to shift in a big way. After years of raising questions, Erich von Däniken unveiled what he called his most startling findings, yet ideas he says could force us to rewrite parts of history. He asked us to pause and imagine. What if some of those ancient sites, carvings, and symbols weren't simply echoes of old human traditions, but footprints of something far more extraordinary? He pointed to recently published works of his that dig into thousands of artifacts, undecoded symbols, and patterns across continents. One of his latest books explores connections between pyramids, desert lines, gold-filled burial chambers, and text fragments he says have been overlooked. He says the same types of odd alignments and motifs appear in far-flung places: South America, Egypt, Europe, almost like a cosmic signature left behind by visitors from beyond. He suggests that this wave of evidence is different. Rather than only saying, "What if aliens visited Earth?" he says, "Look, here might be the footprints." For example, he points to massive stone structures aligning perfectly with astronomical markers, ancient texts referring to men from the stars, and sites whose technical precision seems out of step with the known tools of their eras. He asks, could our ancestors have been inspired, guided, or even helped by something alien? And if so, how much of human history is still hidden? This claim sends a ripple through the world of mystery seekers and even casual sci-fi fans. It invites each of us to become a detective, not just reading history, but looking for the clues ourselves. He encourages us to imagine being at those ancient sites, feeling the weight of stones carved thousands of years ago, noticing the star shadows cast at dawn, and hearing the echo of a civilization looking upward. But as with everything von Däniken does, the excitement comes wrapped in argument. Mainstream archaeologists and historians remain cautious. Many regard his latest propositions as part of his long pattern of speculation. They argue that for such sweeping claims, the proof still needs to meet the usual standards: published peer review, clear dating, non-ambiguous context. Nonetheless, the conversation he's stirring is vibrant and expanding. For his part, von Däniken doesn't shy away from the controversy. In fact, he seems to embrace it. He knows he's walking a fine line between possible extra-earthly influence and fringe theory. Yet he keeps inviting us in, offering visuals of strange engravings, inviting us to question accepted timelines, and asking, what if the ancient world wasn't just about the human race alone? So, as we stand here on the brink of what could be a new understanding of the past, we ask ourselves, are these clues simply curiosity, or are they the tip of an iceberg? And what would our world look like if, even just for a moment, we accepted that the visitors from the stars left more than just stories behind? How the world responded to these revelations, who embraced them, who rejected them, and what it all means for how we view our place in the universe. The bigger picture. The moment arrived when the ripple created by Erich von Däniken could no longer be ignored. His ideas about ancient visitors from the stars sparked reactions that ranged from awe to outright dismissal. On one side stood fans who felt relieved, like someone had finally given voice to their secret questions about our past. On the other stood educators, archaeologists, and scientists who said the claims weren't just daring, they were damaging. They argued that telling the story of humanity means respecting the complexity of evidence, not skipping straight to the sensational. The excitement among believers has been contagious. Many people like the idea of looking up at the stars and wondering if we were visited long ago. These ideas give history a sparkle of mystery, a feeling that maybe human civilization didn't rise purely on its own, but had help from somewhere beyond. Schools of thought changed, conversations shifted, and even late-night TV started plugging the question, what if we're not alone? Yet at the same time, the scientific community raised firm objections. They said von Däniken's evidence often lacked rigorous backing. They pointed out that many of the claims were based on reinterpretations of old texts or art and invited viewers to accept the most dramatic explanation rather than the simplest. According to one review, scholars saw his work as built on pathetically flawed logic and non-existent evidence. Beyond the immediate reactions lies the bigger picture of what this all means for us. Von Däniken's journey forces us to ask more than did aliens visit Earth? It invites the possibility that our story, the story of humanity, the story of civilization, might be richer than we've been told. It has us pause and consider, what if being human means we were influenced by something beyond our planet, something cosmic? This notion shakes up not just archaeology and science, but religion, philosophy, and identity. If the builders of ancient pyramids or the carvers of the Nazca lines looked up and weren't alone in their inspiration, then our origin story widens. We become part of a larger tapestry of space and time, rather than just children of the earth. For you and me, the audience watching this unfold, there's something uplifting in that. It's a gentle nudge to hold on to wonder, to keep asking questions, and to remain open to new possibilities. Whether we ultimately believe that aliens visited us or not, the story challenges us to see history as something alive, not fixed. It reminds us that the past might still be whispering secrets, waiting for us to listen. As we stand at this point, having seen who von Däniken is, how his ideas rose into the spotlight, what he's recently unveiled, and how the world responded, one question stands at the threshold of the next chapter. What comes after the idea? How do we move from mystery to meaning, from speculation to discovery? Let's step into that together. The future he sees beyond the stars. Now we come to a moment where everything seems to pivot, the future of our story, not just the past. After decades of exploring old stones, strange symbols, and ancient texts, the man at the center of this tale, Erich von Däniken, turns his eyes ahead. He says the next chapter isn't just about what happened long ago, but about what may yet happen. He believes we stand at a crossroads. Will we uncover the key, or will the key uncover us? In recent interviews, von Däniken shared that despite his bold claims and decades of investigation, he still hasn't found a smoking gun. A single piece of evidence so clear it can't be denied. He says he has strong hints, patterns, and signs, but not a fully accepted proof. And yet, this fact doesn't slow him down. Instead, it fuels his excitement. He sees potential. Maybe the proof lies somewhere we have not yet looked, maybe even right under our noses. What's moving him now is a blend of hope and purpose. He says the phenomena of the ancient astronaut idea aren't purely archaeological oddities anymore. They've become portals to deeper questions. Where did we come from? Are we alone? Is there a legacy from someone else that lives inside our construction of society, belief, and technology? By focusing on these questions, he invites us, the viewers, to imagine ourselves not only as learners of history, but as companions in a cosmic search. This shift in focus also brings an element of urgency. Von Däniken suggests that time may be running out for our old assumptions. He points to modern advanced telescopes scanning the skies, probes traveling into deep space, cultural stories resurfacing, and says these are signs we're inching closer to the moment when the ancient mysteries might speak clearly. Another part of his message is that we should open up our minds, our curiosity, and our willingness to accept strange possibilities while still keeping our feet on the ground of evidence and wonder. For you and me watching this story unfold, this section feels like the tipping point. It's the phase where the idea transforms into a mission. The allure of hidden pasts becomes the thrill of a future that might be revealed. Von Däniken doesn't just want us to continue wondering, he wants us to prepare to listen, to watch, and to engage. So as we move into the final wrap-up of his journey, remember this. The story isn't only who came to Earth long ago, it's also what are the visitors still trying to tell us. And zooming out, it becomes, what does that mean for us right now in our own journey on this planet? With this in mind, we're ready to pull all the threads together. The man, the ideas, the evidence, the reactions, and see where this trail leads us next. So, what do you think about Erich von Däniken's latest revelation? Could this be the discovery that finally proves we were never alone, or is it just another mystery waiting to be uncovered among the stars? Let us know in the comments section. If you want more interesting revelations about your favorite celebrities, be sure to like, subscribe, and watch the next video shown on your screen. See you there!